Sources say equipment had been moving out quietly for 15 days before the final departure. U.S. troops reportedly withdrew to Tower 22, a military facility located near the demilitarized zone on the Jordan-Syria border.
Withdrawal did not happen in a single night. It began quietly. No dramatic announcement, no press conference, no official statement confirming a timeline. According to regional sources, equipment started moving out nearly 2 weeks before the final convoy rolled away. Trucks left under darkness. Helicopters made short, controlled flights. Containers were shifted, not abandoned. By the time the last personnel departed, the base had already been half empty for days. The location in question had long been considered one of America's most visible forward positions in southern Syria. It functioned as a logistics node, a staging point, and a symbol of U.S. presence near a sensitive border corridor. For years, it supported counterterrorism operations and coordinated with regional partners. But now, that footprint has changed. Sources say American troops were repositioned toward Tower 22, a military facility near the Jordan-Syria border. The site sits close to a demilitarized zone and has played a support role for operations in the region for over a decade. It gained global attention in early 2024 after a drone attack killed 3 U.S. soldiers and injured dozens. Since then, security at the facility has remained tight. Prior to the redeployment, the original base reportedly housed several hundred personnel from both Army and Air Force units. Engineering teams, aviation crews, logistics specialists, and security forces operated there. It was not just symbolic, it was functional. Now that presence is gone. Officials have not described the move as a retreat. Instead, it has been characterized as a tactical repositioning. American forces remain inside Syria at other facilities, particularly in the northeast. Coordination with regional allies continues. Air operations continue. Intelligence sharing continues. But the most visible southern outpost no longer exists. Whether this is a careful recalibration or a signal of something larger depends on who you ask. The timing is what raises eyebrows. The withdrawal comes during a period of rapid political change inside Syria. After years of conflict, a new leadership structure emerged following the collapse of the previous government. The transitional administration has sought international recognition and has opened dialogue with Western nations. Diplomatic ties that were frozen for years have begun to thaw. Sanctions were lifted. Meetings were held. Syria formally joined an international coalition focused on counterterrorism operations. High-level talks between Washington and Damascus took place publicly. On paper, it looks like stabilization, but geopolitics rarely operates on paper alone. Simultaneously, a major security reshuffle unfolded in northeastern Syria. A comprehensive agreement between the Syrian government and Kurdish-led forces reshaped control across large areas of territory. Government troops deployed into cities that had been under autonomous administration. Armed units were reorganized. Civil institutions were merged into state structures. For Washington, this meant one thing: its long-standing Kurdish partnership was no longer the same. American officials signaled that the operational need for that alliance had diminished. For nearly a decade, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces had been central to U.S. counter-ISIS efforts. Now, that partnership appears to be winding down. At the same time, another operation began quietly. Thousands of ISIS detainees were transferred out of northeastern Syria into Iraqi-controlled facilities. The relocation followed concerns about prison security after territorial control shifted rapidly. Officials feared potential mass escapes if detention sites fell into unstable hands. The numbers are significant. Thousands of suspected militants from dozens of countries were moved under coordinated supervision. American officials confirmed the transfer plan and urged foreign governments to repatriate their nationals. Despite ISIS losing its territorial caliphate years ago, the group remains active in cells across the region. Just months ago, an attack in central Syria killed 2 American soldiers and a civilian contractor. Retaliatory strikes followed, so the environment remains unstable. Against that backdrop, Iran's leadership has delivered a message that is both firm and deliberate. During anniversary celebrations marking the Islamic Revolution, Iran's president addressed tens of thousands in Tehran. His speech rejected what he called excessive demands from Washington. He insisted Iran would not bow to pressure and would not remain silent in the face of aggression. He repeated that Iran's nuclear program is peaceful. He expressed openness to verification, but he rejected expanding negotiations to include missile systems or regional alliances. The tone was clear. Dialogue is possible, but not on Washington's terms. Behind the speeches lies a deeper tension. International inspectors have struggled to verify certain aspects of Iran's nuclear stockpile after previous conflicts damaged key facilities. Before the most recent war, Iran had enriched uranium to levels that alarmed Western governments. While still below weapons-grade thresholds, the technical gap is narrow. Iranian officials have hinted that dilution of enriched material could be discussed if sanctions are fully lifted. But lifting all sanctions is a major political decision in Washington. At the same time, domestic unrest inside Iran has intensified. Economic collapse triggered nationwide protests. Reports of heavy crackdowns surfaced, with thousands allegedly killed or detained. The leadership publicly acknowledged the unrest, while framing anniversary rallies as proof of national unity. Diplomacy and pressure are moving in parallel. Indirect negotiations between Iran and the United States resumed in Oman. Mediators facilitated talks focused on nuclear limits and regional stability. American representatives included both diplomatic and military figures, a signal that discussions are backed by force. The framework remains contested. Washington demands a halt to enrichment. Tehran calls that unacceptable. Regional intermediaries have floated compromise proposals, including temporary pauses and export of enriched material. But trust remains low. Meanwhile, military signals have grown louder. Iran's supreme leader warned that any U.S. attack would trigger a regional war. Iranian officials stated openly that American bases across the Middle East could become targets if conflict begins. Those are not vague threats. Iran maintains a large missile arsenal, capable of reaching multiple U.S. installations in the region. Analysts estimate thousands of ballistic systems ranging from short to medium distance. Bases in Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Turkey fall within reach. Satellite imagery has shown increased activity at Iranian missile facilities. Repairs at launch sites appear to be prioritized over nuclear reconstruction. Observers interpret that as a shift toward strengthening retaliatory capability. And this is where the withdrawal becomes more than just logistics. Is it a step to reduce exposure? A quiet effort to shrink the most vulnerable forward positions before tensions escalate? Or is it simply strategic consolidation, moving troops to more defensible Allied locations while maintaining operational reach? Washington has simultaneously reinforced the region. An aircraft carrier strike group entered nearby waters. Fighter jets were repositioned. Missile defense systems were deployed across Allied states. Additional naval assets were placed on standby. Every movement carries weight. Every repositioning sparks speculation. The base closure may not represent disengagement. American forces remain elsewhere in Syria. Counter-terrorism operations continue. Coordination with regional allies continues. But symbolism matters. In volatile regions, a single convoy leaving at night can send a message louder than any speech. And right now, every actor in the Middle East is watching closely. Not just what Washington says, but what it does. Whether this is preparation, precaution, or part of a larger diplomatic strategy remains unclear. But one fact is undeniable. The temperature across the region is rising. The question now is not just why the troops moved, but what happens next. Because while one base has gone quiet, the broader military posture in the region has grown louder. In late January, a U.S. carrier strike group entered the Arabian Sea. Warships repositioned. Fighter jets rotated forward. Patriot and THAAD missile defense systems were deployed across Allied countries. Surveillance flights increased. Naval patrols tightened in the Strait of Hormuz. None of this was hidden. The message was clear. Repositioning does not equal weakness. At the same time, reports emerged of Iranian naval activity intensifying. Fast attack craft shadowed commercial vessels. Drone activity near U.S. ships increased. One unmanned aerial vehicle was reportedly intercepted after approaching a U.S. carrier group. Iranian officials confirmed new missile deployments inside hardened underground facilities. The pattern is familiar. Diplomacy above the surface. Military signaling below it. Iran has repeatedly warned that if the United States initiates strikes, retaliation will not be limited to one battlefield. Iranian officials have openly stated that American bases across the region would be legitimate targets. They have also warned host nations that allowing U.S. forces to launch attacks from their soil could draw them into conflict. This is where regional governments feel pressure. Countries hosting U.S. forces, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, suddenly find themselves in a difficult position. On one hand, they rely on American security guarantees. On the other, they sit within range of Iranian missiles. Reports suggest that several Middle Eastern governments quietly urged Washington to avoid escalation during recent diplomatic exchanges. The fear is not theoretical. In 2025, Iran launched missiles at a major U.S. airbase in Qatar following American strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. The damage was limited, but the precedent was set. So when a U.S. base in southern Syria quietly closes during rising tensions, analysts begin connecting dots. One interpretation argues that Washington is reducing exposed positions in areas that are harder to defend. Southern Syria, particularly near border corridors influenced by Iranian-backed militias, has long been considered vulnerable. By consolidating forces into better protected facilities in Jordan and northeastern Syria, the U.S. may be minimizing risk without reducing capability. Another interpretation suggests something broader. Some analysts believe the move reflects a strategic pivot, a long-term effort to shrink America's footprint in the Middle East and redirect resources elsewhere. Competition with China, domestic priorities, and fatigue from decades of regional entanglement have shaped policy debates in Washington. There is also speculation about quiet understandings between major powers. Russia maintains military installations in Syria. Iran maintains deep influence through proxy networks. Syria's new leadership is attempting to stabilize relations with multiple actors at once. In that complex web, a redeployment could be part of a larger behind-the-scenes negotiation. But speculation remains speculation. What is confirmed is this: American forces remain active in Syria. They continue counter-terrorism missions. They continue coordinating detainee transfers. They continue operating from alternative bases. The departure was selective, not total. Yet perception often shapes reality. From Tehran's perspective, the closure of a forward U.S. base near sensitive corridors could be interpreted as a cautious step backward. Iranian officials have publicly demanded that American forces leave the region entirely before meaningful negotiations can advance. From Washington's perspective, consolidating positions while reinforcing naval and air power could be viewed as preparing for worst-case scenarios while keeping diplomatic doors open. This dual-track approach, pressure and negotiation, defines the current moment. Indirect talks continue through Omani mediation. Proposals circulate. Conditions are debated. Enrichment levels, sanctions relief, missile limitations, every detail carries political cost. But trust remains thin. Iran insists its nuclear program is peaceful and rejects restrictions on its missile arsenal. The United States insists any agreement must address both nuclear capabilities and regional destabilization. Meanwhile, military forces remain within striking distance of one another. Satellite imagery has reportedly shown Iranian missile systems being repositioned deeper into hardened sites. Iranian defense officials have declared readiness to defend the nation with full force. American commanders have publicly emphasized deterrence and preparedness. Each side signals resolve. Each side leaves room for negotiation. In this environment, even routine movements can appear ominous. When trucks leave a base at night, it sparks headlines. When ships change course, markets react. When speeches reference regional war, diplomats move quickly. The Middle East has seen cycles like this before. Periods where tension spikes, rhetoric sharpens, and the world waits to see which path will prevail. The difference now lies in the broader geopolitical context. Russia remains deeply involved in Syria. China has increased economic engagement across the Gulf. Regional powers are recalculating alliances. Energy markets remain sensitive to any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. A direct U.S.-Iran confrontation would not remain localized, and both sides know it. That awareness may be the strongest force preventing escalation. At the same time, accidents are always possible. A drone miscalculation, a naval collision, a missile test interpreted as preparation. History shows how quickly misread signals can spiral. Which brings us back to the original question. Did U.S. troops flee a key base before Iran strikes? The word flee implies panic, chaos, disorder. What occurred appears more controlled than that. Equipment moved gradually. Personnel relocated methodically. Coordination continued. There were no emergency evacuations under fire, but controlled does not mean insignificant. In volatile regions, controlled withdrawals can be strategic or protective. They can signal confidence or caution. They can represent long-term recalibration or short-term risk reduction. At this stage, No public statement from Washington confirms that the move was directly linked to Iranian threats. Officials have framed it within broader operational adjustments. Yet the timing overlaps with rising missile rhetoric, naval incidents, and renewed nuclear negotiations. That overlap fuels suspicion. For Iran, projecting strength serves domestic and regional audiences. For the United States, projecting readiness reinforces deterrence. For regional allies, avoiding open war remains the priority. The base is closed. The troops have moved. The carriers remain. Missiles are deployed. Talks continue. The region waits. Whether this moment becomes another entry in the long history of Middle East brinkmanship, or the beginning of something larger, depends on decisions being made far from the desert corridors where the trucks once rolled. For now, the repositioning stands as a reminder that in geopolitics, silence can be as loud as action. And every move, whether labeled redeployment or retreat, reshapes the balance in ways that may only become clear later.